My failures have become my successes, honestly. Long nights, sitting, analyzing data, figuring things out theoretically, and then putting them into practice is how I learned. I started with nothing, and just like my life, right? Started with nothing in the dwellings of the Bronx. And I say, where do I want to go with this? And what do I need to take me there?
All right, guys, welcome back to Beyond the Science, where we go deeper into the data and the center of voices, transforming the field of ABA and beyond. I'm your host, Sharon Trotman, here with my fantastic crew, Joseph Adams and Darius Cooper. Now, this episode today is brought to you by Adams Behavior Consultant and Sapphire. All right, shout out to Sapphire. So listen here, guys. Before we get started, I just got to give a quick rundown. We have not been in the studio in about 3 months.
Yeah, about 3.
We've been gone a little bit. We've been doing our thing here. So
oh no, I think it's longer.
I think
it's like early April, right? That'll be 3 months.
All right. The reason why we took so long is because we were waiting for this phenomenal guest that we have here now. Quickly, so today's guest is a force. She's a multi-credential leader, respected voice, and a presence that commands both excellence and authenticity. Please welcome by me joining us, Quatiba Davis. So we are honored to have you here. How are you feeling today?
I am feeling amazing today. I had a very busy day, but I'm excited to be here with you guys.
We appreciate you taking some time out because we know you're busy. We're here in Atlanta in our studio. We've seen you on a few occasions at a couple of conferences, seen you doing your thing. I'm a huge fan of everything that you're doing. You know, we've talked a lot, and I reached out, recently, like let's get you on a pod. So this is amazing. What do you think when you hear her name and kind of see what she's doing, Coop?
Well, we met, I think BY was our first amazing thought exchange, actually. I think that we had even a clip that might have did a bunch of numbers. And unfortunately, because of everything we had going on, we didn't get to really connect. But I thought the thought exchange was amazing. We got to connect a little bit more again at Black Health Connect a couple weeks ago. Shout out to Black Health Connect and Duke and everything they got going on over there. And I think it's just, personally, it's motivational, and I'm glad we do get this time today to actually have a conversation. So I think everything you're doing and how you're doing it needs to be broadcasted more. Even for who I am, it motivates me a lot. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Now, I was gonna say a lot of the accolades and all the letters she has in front of her name, but I really want to start from the beginning.
Okay.
Can you really walk us through the journey, through the journey in the field, your journey personally in the field of ABA, and kind of what inspired you to pursue what you're doing now?
So there were a couple of things that inspired me. First, the one that was closest to me is my child. So I was a special education teacher, serving in a school that had a 60-40 makeup. So we served individuals, 60% neurotypical developing individuals, and then 40% students with disabilities. And as I was doing that work, obviously I got pregnant, I was married at the time. And when I gave birth to my daughter, I realized that she had an in utero stroke. And with that stroke caused some paralysis on her right side. So she is now left side dominant. And I was told that she had to receive both physical and occupational therapy. And at the time, I was a teacher. So I was very ignorant to the therapy process. So what I do is I go back and I research and I study, and I'm trying to ask myself, how would this help her and how would this benefit her? And again, being Black and now having a label of now you have to have an IEP and get all of these early intervention services. And I wanted to understand what it was about. So when she was 2 years old, she had an MRI that confirmed her stroke. And she walked like a patient that had cerebral palsy. And they did tell me, she's not going to function well in school. She's not going to be able to, do any extracurricular activities. So just keep her active and keep her moving. So I put her in all types of just after school programs, dance, swim, acting. And then she did fall in love with dance. And it wasn't until she left middle school where she felt defeated because she still couldn't point her foot, and now it was time for her to go on point in ballet. And so that struggle and her struggle throughout these years has actually brought me to applied behavior analysis. And I say that going back to the education room is when I was in the classroom, I met a BCBA, and the work that she was doing, we called it magic, right? And I'm like, how is she changing these behaviors? And so when I moved to Florida in 2016, I'm kind of a nerd. Like, I love going to school. So I'm like, what do I want to do next? I don't want to teach for the rest of my life. And quite frankly, being a teacher wasn't paying my bills. So I said, okay, what can I do to still make an impact on children? Because that's what, motivated me every day, but also change them clinically. And so that's when I had my supervision hours with the supervisor in Florida and went to the Chicago school. And that's how I fell into the field.
Oh, I love it. Shout out to the Chicago school, by the way. I know a lot of people from Chicago school. And, good instructors, good teachers there. So that's amazing. Now, I appreciate it because I didn't know some of that story, by the way. Yeah. Joe, when you hear about that story, what comes to your mind?
I mean, just the journey. Just being just transparent right now, you probably don't know how many people like you're gonna help. So we appreciate that. And then B, just the heart of an educator. Yeah. Finding those that want to learn and also willing to go out and learn yourself. Yeah. So I think, because we've got a similar background, education, special education teacher, and just seeing some of the same things that you saw. Yes. That's just some of the same reasons I'm inspired too. So.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that. That was touching. That was a moment.
Thank you.
So was she given an autism diagnosis?
She does not have autism. She has right side hemiparesis. So she has a paralysis. So what she needed was more OT and PT, right? Because her physical ability wasn't strong enough that would meet her developmental peers in that aspect. So she struggled a lot with just keeping up with different things. Even now, she's at FAM, right? And she was reluctant. She's probably going to hate me if she hears this, but she was reluctant to join their dance department too, because she's like, what if I still can't move the way they move? So my biggest encouragement to her, and hopefully she'll hear this, is to never ever shrink yourself and continue to motivate yourself, because you may be motivating someone else at the end of the day. But I just want to continue to encourage her.
So with her doing OT and PT, what brought you to ABA?
So I did see the changes in OT and PT, but ABA was introduced to me in the school that I was working at. I was working in an independent school on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Okay, and like New York. Said, it had a really unique dynamic on the children that we served. And I worked with children with varying abilities. So I worked with children with Down syndrome, developmental disabilities, ADHD, autism. So it was a great support to all children. Right now, we have to go by what peers believe deserves applied behavior analysis, and that's autism, right? But it doesn't just stop with autism, because we could change everybody's behavior in this room if I observe them long enough, right? So I think that's where my love for applied behavior analysis came.
Now, you hold multiple credentials and leadership roles. I'm not going to get into that. I know that's kind of really shaped, what you're doing now, but what does your current role look like? And can you talk to our listeners about what are you most passionate about right now?
So currently I serve as the Chief Clinical Officer for ABA Centers. And what my current role looks like is I support the clinical acumen of the organization. So any clinical operational decisions that has to be made go by me. So any policies, compliance policies, ethical policies, decision-making, programming, treatment plans, assessment data, and being able to analyze that data for strong clinical outcomes. I'm working now with our sister company, Curative AI, and we're trying to build a large AI system where our clinicians can have all of their data and on one screen, so that we can make data-driven decisions and be able to improve the quality of life of our clients.
So me and you were talking maybe a few weeks ago, and I when people talk about you, they say Quatiba's a badass. Like, no, seriously, like she's badass. And you are. And, you know, the journey of being who you are now, being a Black woman in a C-suite position, me and you were talking, I don't even know if there's any other in our field.
It's not.
If there's, so you probably are the only Black woman in our field. Somebody please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, that holds a C-suite position. I know every journey comes with resistance.
Yes.
So talk to us for the young Quatibas out there, people watching. Talk to us about those challenges that you've overcome and how did they change you as a person and a professional?
So I'm going to go back a little bit because I'm very passionate about the organization that I work for a couple reasons, right? So I started as the first employee and the first hire in Florida. And with that start, obviously, when you're starting anything in life that can be groundbreaking, right? You put your whole self into it. And that's what I did with this company. So I was hired as the clinical director, and we started out of Port St. Lucie, Florida. And I took on a caseload of clients, even though I was the clinical director, and I trained 2 RBTs who are actually now very successful in the field as a BCBA and a director of operations. So I'm going to give them their applause too. But with that start, I started with nothing. And just like my life, right? Started with nothing in the dwellings of the Bronx. And so I have to actually, what I always do is set a goal for myself. I look at the bigger picture always. And I say, where do I want to go with this? And what do I need to take me there, right? And so my goal with this organization was to ensure that I met the chairman who was then the CEO, met his expectations, but then also met the expectations of the field. And I did that by creating over 2,000 programs when I first started, because again, I had nothing. And so if I went out there with nothing and expecting someone to give it to me, I probably would have failed at what I did, right? So I stayed up late nights. I created these programs. I ensured that I knew every assessment tool, every conventional tool in the field, but then also how to read every evaluation tool when it starts at the onset at diagnostics, right? And so being able to identify the levels of clients, their level of functioning, the IQ of those clients, and then the metrics of each measurement of one of the tools that we use, it was actually it was monumental for the organization. So then with that data, I said, okay, I can do it. I'm good with writing treatment plans and observing clinical outcomes and ensuring that I prescribe effectively and efficiently and with great fidelity. But then when I started hiring BCBAs on board, I noticed that they struggled in that area. And most of them said, we don't get this training in school. No one trains us on how to administer an assessment and how to analyze these data results. So me being a leader, even though I wasn't leading the organization at the time, I wanted to ensure that we had clinicians that were competent. And that was always my goal too. So what I did was I founded the assessment team in November 2022. And I started with 2 BCBAs and I sat with them and I created this theoretical approach to prescribing using the Vineland tool. And we started with the Vineland. And then with the Vineland, it's a standard deviation of 15. And I actually measured out each one of the levels of functioning, like level 1, 2, and 3 of the client. But then we took that, utilized the MBA, the maladaptive behavior assessment, to identify the behaviors and the severity and magnitude of those behaviors in relation to all of the results of the assessments. And so the other thing that I wanted to ensure BCBAs knew at the time was it wasn't just using any assessment, because BCBAs reinforce themselves, right? Yeah. They say, I know the BB-MAP, so I'm going to use the BB-MAP on everybody, right? And so that's not how we make strong clinical outcomes. And that's not the decisions that we want to make. So I started with identifying for them which tool is the most valid for the client that's in front of you, right? So are you using this tool for an EI client? Are you using this tool for a school age client? Are you using this tool for an adolescent or young adult? And what is their developmental functioning around this tool, right? And how can we identify those deficits and what hour of recommendation would relate to this number on the assessment? So all of our assessments function in a different way.
Yep.
And sometimes we put colors and we color those boxes, right? For the ABLEs and the AFLs, but what does that really mean?
Yep.
So when you quantify something and put a number and then align it with an hour, because you're objectively measuring during treatment, how long would it take before this client says bah when he's trying to say ball, right? How long is that shaping metrics for this FCT, for this functional communication goal to actually measure out the way that I want it to, and that will make this client successful. So anyway, around all of that, I then created a prescription tool for the organization where I sat with some of my assessors and we identified different equations and metrics for each one of the conventional tools and applied behavior analysis. So the ABLEs, the AFLs, the PEAK, Essentials for Living, the BB MAP, the Vineland 3, and we put all of these metrics together into one tool to ensure that we provide the best and highest quality for all of our clients. So then after that, I served as the director of diagnostic in Florida alone. Again, assessments are my things, my jam. Yeah. So we were able to have a very cyclical flow. So it was back then, they came in for a diagnostic evaluation and I trained some MSW clinicians to run those assessments. And then once that evaluation was done, they went into the assessment team. They got a great assessor. The assessment was completed in 72 hours. And then they went into care immediately. So the flow of all the different departments allowed us to just get kids off the wait list immediately, get them access to a diagnosis immediately, and then no one languishes on the wait list. So I think just putting all those things in place and ensuring that our clinicians had resources was probably the biggest goal for me and the organization. And then in July 2023, I moved into the role of Chief Clinical Officer.
Wow. Joe, if you operationally define badass, her name comes up. Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That is amazing.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. Wow.
So let me ask you a question. Doing all of that and the amount of training that took, and you trained people from multiple disciplines, how do you see the field going in the future when that's not as accessible as it once was?
So we have to make it accessible, right? So we have to create the access for everybody who's coming behind us, especially if we have a strong passion for the work that we do. So it wasn't accessible to the people who walked into my organization either, right? So I had to create that space and open up that door to make it accessible. So we also, as an organization, I didn't create this. This was the CEO's goal, was to have an academy of excellence. And within that academy, we actually train all the BCBAs and RBTs that come into the organization. And along the way, no one's perfect, right? So when we find those deficits, we then create a training to ensure that those deficits historically that affected us and affected our progression does not happen again.
So I want to ask, you're from Bronx, New York, right?
I am.
What was that upbringing like, and how does that translate now to your career?
I love that question, actually, and I don't think anyone has ever asked me that question. So I'm going to be 100% transparent here. So I grew up in the dwellings in the Bronx on Crotona Avenue, East Tremont. And there were times where, I did not come from, any silver spoon in my mouth. My mom was a single mom. I have the stereotypical Black family story. My dad wasn't in the picture. I walked 20 flights of stairs when the elevator was broken, when there was urine in the elevator. And my number one goal every time I walked into that building was, I have to get out of here. Right. So, and not to say that, that wasn't a good way to bring people up. It was the only way, right? And so what I needed to do for myself is never forget where I came from, because I don't. That kind of highlights my success. But then always remember the struggle that I've been through. And just as a Black woman alone, right, we come with struggle, most of us. And every time I walked up those flight of stairs, like I always say, I have a goal in my head at all times, is how can I not walk up these flight of stairs again, right? And so in high school, I was a very smart girl in school, but I was very talkative. And I got in trouble a lot. And I got in trouble a lot because I was always very affirmative. And the more I matured, the more I can say that I was able to deliver it in a better way. But obviously, when I'm young in middle school and in high school, you don't know how to deliver your affirmative approach in the right way. So what I did with that is I ensured that I utilize everything that I like, all my resources in a good way, so that I can grow either in a professional way, in a professional field, but then also become a model to everybody that's coming up behind me. And then I had a baby, right? I had a baby at 20. My high school sweetheart, I got married, right? And so then it was like, oh my God, it's another fight. It's another defeat, because I have to now be a model, a constant model, a daily model for this little girl that I just had, right? And so I think my children were my motivation, because I gave birth to them so young. Now we're like best friends. But I do appreciate that I can be a model for my girls.
So let me ask, right? You know, growing up in the Bronx, Black woman, you dealt with, you know, a world of problems and issues and stuff, right? Yeah. And then you go into now the corporate world, which I'm assuming might be a little white dominated, right? You were able to handle problems a certain way growing up that you can't remotely handle the same way now in the corporate world. So what advice do you give to those Black women who may have that upbringing now, that were around Black people or, you know, their own culture for so long, and now they're successful in the corporate world and getting played in different ways now?
Yeah. So I'm gonna make a statement that I make to all my mentees coming behind me, is you always remain professional until the end, because no one can take your knowledge, your competence, or your professionalism away from you, right? People can put things into the environment, like adjectives that they place on you, and people can judge your behavior and the way that you project your voice, but they can never take the knowledge or your character away from you. I always say, and I heard it from my daughter, she graduated from Howard a year ago, and Miss DeShonda spoke at her graduation. And one thing she said that I would never forget is titles are always rented, right? So we can all move up in this professional world and get a title, but your and that title can be removed because they can fire you tomorrow, right? But your character is something that no one can ever take from you. Your character is your values, right? Your character is your morals, and that can't ever be pulled out of you. So always show up as a professional, always speak intelligently to the work that you do, and always remain competent in your work.
Ooh, I hope our listeners heard that. That's a drop the mic moment. Yes, you're listening to Beyond the Science. We're live here in our studios here in Atlanta. It's episode, one of our proud sponsors, Adam Behavior Consultant, with a mission to empower and support families, enabling them to help their loved ones leading fulfilling independent lives. They're dedicated to providing comprehensive ABA services that enhance social and life skills, as well as overall preparedness for the journey of life. Now, guys, that was heavy. Now, one thing that we do on this show, we keep it a buck, and she's definitely keeping it a buck here. Now, I'm curious because we talk about sustainability and leadership a lot, and I know that's something that you're passionate about.
Yes.
And Coop always asks some good questions. Every episode we do, they always say Coop asks the good questions. But, you know, jokes aside, you carry so much responsibility. Mm-hmm. How do you stay grounded while carrying so much responsibility? How do you stay motivated and grounded while carrying so much responsibility in the position that you're in? Yeah,
so passion leads my motivation, because I'm passionate about this field. Carrying the weight it's not easy. I am going to say that. However, I've created hobbies for myself, and one of my hobbies is Pilates. So I make sure maybe every other night, yes, I go to Pilates and I stretch, and I think, and part of my talk, yesterday at Weeba was stretch. Lean in, right? Make sure you understand who you are before you start to put yourself out there to other people. And sometimes with Pilates, it gives me a chance to think. It gives me a chance to just be within myself, my natural self, and hone in to what I have to do. Does it fix all my problems? Absolutely not. And I'm not going to say just moving at the pace and the position that I'm in now, I'm not going to say it was easy to get here. And nothing about this was easy, right? I have to always be on my toes. I have to always understand what's going on. That's going to build my growth, but then also the growth of the organization. One of my toxic traits, I would say, is I always feel like I need to do everything on my own. And because I have my own goals that I need to beat. And it's like every day I'm trying to beat myself from yesterday, right? Like, how good was I yesterday? But you know what? I can be better today. I can do something better tomorrow. And not only for myself, but for the people that I work with too. So I think I have to do better with delegating. Same. I have to do better with that. But I feel like, and it could be, trauma, right? From my past, right? You handle it, right? You are the owner of this. So you make sure it gets done. And sometimes I feel like the only way it's going to get done is if I do it. Right. So I am learning though, as a leader, and I watched some of my team members present today, and I was so very proud of them, that the work that they also produce comes from the leadership that they get behind. And just being at this conference today, I had the opportunity to be introduced probably 4 times and introduced by my team members, and just the words that they stated, and just the direction that where they're heading, and with them mentioning my name, it was just glorifying, actually. It felt so good because sometimes I do the work and I feel like I'm going to cry, but I never feel seen, you know? And it was highlighting during this conference. And I'm like, oh my God, someone sees me, right? And so I get so caught up on production and producing and what's your number, right? What's the KPI here? That I have all of that grounded in my head, but I never get... And I don't want an applause for everything that I do, but every here and now you want somebody to say, I appreciate you, right? Yeah. Thank you for the work that you are doing. And I think my team is doing that for me.
I love that. And I can relate. I have that conversation a lot. I want you to know that we see you. When you're here, we see the work that you're doing, and we appreciate it. I'm glad you got those shout outs from your team today. You. We all need a little bit of verbal praise, a little bit of reinforcement sometimes to be validated. So I love that you got that. All right, calling all mid-career health or healthcare professionals. Do you want a seat at the federal policy table? Now, if so, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Health Policy Fellowship Program might be for you. Check this out. Applications are for 2026 to 2027 class of the RWJF Health Policy Fellows are open from August 1st to November 3rd, 2025. Now, this nonpartisan hands-on fellowship places experienced professionals like you right in the center of federal health policy making. This one-year fellowship based in Washington, D.C. begins with a 3.5-month immersive policy orientation where you'll connect with over 200 policy experts and think tanks. Following orientation, fellows serve full time as senior advisors to a senior member of a legislative or executive branch. You'll learn and influence how policy gets made and gain the skills to become a renowned health policy leader. Now, who should apply for this? Behavior analysts, of course. Mid-career professionals that are behavior analysts from across the health space. Medicine, nursing, public health, law, dentistry, economics, and behavioral health. Social work, health services, and disciplines that influence the population health like housing, education, transportation, and more. Applications are open August 1st through November 3rd, 2025. To learn more or apply, visit healthpolicyfellows.org. Again, that's healthpolicyfellows.org.
So I also wanted to just add what gave me my big break into moving into first my academia experience, but then also my professional roles. So when I was in middle school, like I said, I probably was not a very good girl behaviorally, but academically, my grades were always really high. And so because I had really good grades, I was entered into the student sponsor partnership program. And originally, they could not find a sponsor for me. So I ended up going to DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx for 3 months. And then 3 months later, they gave me a call and they let me know that they found a sponsor. 1 month into that, I was called downstairs to Sister Patricia's office, and they said, well, we found your sponsor and we want you to meet her. And they're fixing my skirt and buttoning up my shirt. And, I'm 14 years old. And I'm like, what? Like, who is this person? So I go into the room and they're like, well, you don't know who she is? Look, and I'm like, no. So then she's like, well, who's the 30th president? And I'm like, John F. Kennedy. And she's like, well, I'm his sister. And I'm like, hi. And so my principal was hitting me under the chair with a ruler, like, fix yourself. Right now. But anyway, I say that because that was the beginning of our journey. But toward the end, she became like my second mom. And so she lived right down the block from the school. She gave me an opportunity, and she gave me an opportunity to attend a parochial school, and she paid my full tuition. And she didn't have really high expectations of me other than me having those expectations for myself. And so if I got a C, and that was rare, but if I did, she would say, okay, what can we do better so you never get that C again? And I think I got 1 C in high school because after some time, my goal was to prove to her that I can be exactly what she thought that I can be. She was very encouraging, very inspiring. She taught me etiquette. She taught me how to eat at a table. And she taught me you never ask a woman her age, because I would always say, how old are you? And I think I didn't learn her age until she passed. So I did want to highlight her because she is a very impactful person that was in my life and throughout my journey.
So I want to ask, the story of like, your mom raised you.
Yes.
Where was your actual mother along this process, and what was she doing?
Working. 2 jobs.
Okay, what did she do for work?
So she was a home attendant. So she would go into homes and support the elderly, bathing them, taking their blood pressure, things like that, and stay there overnight sometimes. So my sister and I, my older sister and I, had to fend for ourselves.
So, I mean, I love, because you said she's working 2 jobs. She's busy. Clearly busy trying to put food on the table.
Correct.
So, you talk about sponsorship. I mean, it sounds like she was more than a sponsor. It sounds like she was low-key like a little mentor as well, which is very important. Can you quickly talk about, and we talk about this a lot on our podcast, just the power of having a mentor as well. For people who are coming up, like having a mentor, selecting that process. Talk to us about that mentorship. I
think mentorship is extremely important. And I think it's important for a couple of reasons. One, you have a model in front of you, right? And I think just like with ABA, we all need modeling, right? That comes with BST, making sure that the model that's provided to you, you follow up, right? But when you have mentees, you don't want them to just follow your journey. You want them to create their own journey. So it's like, how do you ensure that they do that? And every time I start with a new mentee, my question is always, what's your goal, right? What do you want from me? How can I feed you in a way that you will feel full, that you will feel fulfilled by the end of this journey? And sometimes I get blank stares because people just don't know, right? And then other times I get a laundry list of things. And when I get, and then you get that common medium where it's like 2 goals, okay? So when I get the laundry list, I'm like, okay, where do you want us to start here? And how can you compile some of these things on your list to give me just 3 categories? Because sometimes these little subdomains can fit into your main goal, right? But then the person who looks at me with a blank stare, I have to start asking questions to try to guide them to understand what they want for themselves, right? So I think it's important in a sense where you allow people to understand who they are and why why they're doing the work that they're doing. It's also very interesting to me too when I just ask people, what made you come into this field? And they don't even know, right? Some are very transparent. I wanted the money. Education wasn't doing it for me, right? Others are, I want to help people, but I don't want to treat client facing. I want to be behind the computer and help people, right? So I think it's very important for everyone who starts in this field to make sure that first certification cycle, those 2 years, you are client facing in front of a client because that's where all your knowledge is going to come from. You cannot be a leader behind the screen and teach someone else something you've never experienced. So I say this to say that mentorship is important because A, you get a model. B, you set goals for yourself and you learn to attain those goals. And then lastly, you try to achieve what you want to do and be professionally.
Have you ever had a bad mentor?
I have never had a mentor.
I was just going to ask you, do you have a mentor now?
Nope. I've never had a mentor.
All right, hold on. Whoa, hold on.
That's a bold statement.
It is a bold statement.
All right.
Yep.
She's never had a mentor.
Listen, all right. Hold on. We got to dive in a little bit deeper. Hold on. All right, cool. You got it first, and I got to follow up because I know we don't have a lot of time. But that is a statement right there. That's a statement.
You never had a big homie during the process.
I've never had a what?
A big homie.
A mentor.
No.
I don't believe that. There's no way you got to where you at and you ain't have somebody that was a little older with a little wisdom that was able to guide you a little bit.
I think she's saying, and I don't want to speak for you, Quatiba, but you're talking about really stepping into that actual mentorship role, like an established, I'm mentee, mentor, not people who may be giving her advice along the way and stuff like that.
So she might have had a supervisor, but not a mentor.
Correct. I've had a supervisor. I think he said it. I've had supervisors, not mentors. I've never even had a mentor-mentee relationship, and nor have I had anybody who gave me advice along the way.
So I'll say that to say because you're the first, and you were supposed to be the first. So you were supposed to mentee by learning how.
Mentor.
That is so inspirational because to be in a... Are you writing a book, by the way?
3 people asked me that over... I know, but
No, your journey... To say you haven't had somebody in that established relationship, to be where you are now is the ultimate story. That's the ultimate inspiration because even me, y'all know AJ, that's my guy. That is my mentor. He's been my mentor for the past decade. So for you to get there without saying, hey, how did you do this? What struggles did you have? Where should I move? Is just, you're basically saying it was trial and error for the most part.
Trial and error. My failures is my mentorship. I think.
Oh shit! Yeah, that was a bar. Hold on, right there. My failures. That's really good stuff. Was your mentor?
It really has been my mentorship, and I think every RCD that I've trained, I write on the board failures, and people are taken aback, like, why is she writing that? Because that's what grew me. My failures have become my successes, honestly. Long nights, sitting, analyzing data, figuring things out theoretically, and then putting them into practice is how I learned. And I said it in my talk yesterday. I've never had a mentor, and although I would have loved to have had that guidance, but I think with everything that I've done for myself to give to others, I've become a whale, right? And becoming that whale, I have the opportunity now to feed into others because no one poured into me.
So are you open to mentorship now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who doesn't want to continue learning, right?
Until the day we check. All right, listeners who are listening now. I'm not telling you guys to not have a mentor because mentorship is important. However, if you guys are listening to this story right now, it's possible. She's literally an example of that. So I hope you guys are taking some inspiration. I'm inspired right now.
Thank you.
And so I really appreciate that. All right, guys, it's time. No fluff, just real talk. We're going to move to straight talk with Joe.
Amazing titles, a lot of leadership. But let's always talk about the most important one, which is mom.
Yeah.
Your daughter now is 19 and she's at FAM.
Yeah.
Shout out to FAM.
Rattlers. Let's not forget my oldest graduated from Howard.
Your oldest graduated from Howard.
HBCU. Let's go.
I hope my daughter gets a volleyball scholarship. But your youngest is 19. So what's new? My new passion is adult services.
Okay.
She's 19. How does things change? And are there things out there that she can have access to within her local environment?
So I think she can have access to anything she wants to gain access to. I think I'm able to open some doors for my children. However, I don't want the key to every door in their life, because just as I stated, my failures were my success. I want them to be able to fail sometimes and understand how to overcome adversity. Because if I do everything for them and I give everything to them, then they won't learn how to be independent, right? And sometimes I struggle with that, right? So my oldest, she takes accountability and she takes initiative, where my youngest, and that's my baby, right? So she always needs that validation and affirmation and say, mommy, like, is this okay for me? Should I do this? Right. So it's harder for her to follow her heart and her passion without my affirmative yes or no. But I am working hard to ensure that she sees what I go through. She hears when I struggle. And she also knows how I overcome those things. Just like when I get invited to all of these conferences, right? I go to work every day. I come home at night. I'm practicing. I'm researching. She's like, how do you do this all night? Like, she's like, I can't do this. Yes, you can do it. Right. And then just recently I spoke on the spectrum law on Fox 35. And I was downstairs before I went to work, because it was an early segment, did the news. The recording was already out and I was on my way to work. And she was like, wait, you were just downstairs doing that? Like a whole segment. And so it's like, I want her to see those things. And I want her to be able to understand that even with her disability, that she can do anything that she puts her little brain to doing, right? And without me having to say, you know what, Kennedy, you can do this.
So can I ask, is her father active?
Her father is active, but he lives in another state. So I am firsthand the person that they see all the time. So they see their dad in the summer and then on some holidays, but obviously they talk to him every day.
So how did he deal with the diagnosis? And then as far as, I know you being a mom, you wouldn't care to look a certain way, and you being comfortable with making sure dad is being on the same page. How was that? What was that like?
So when I was married, he actually followed my lead and what I thought was best for her. So, the therapies was best in my opinion. And he followed up on that. His mom actually cared for her at the time when I was at work in school and he was at work. So she actually got therapy with her grandmother, her paternal grandmother. So everybody was on the same page.
I'm loving just hearing about. I'm learning so much new. Like I see you on LinkedIn a lot and posting. I know all the things that you're doing, but just to hear the things that you're not going to hear every day. That's not going to be on, like, just to hear your story. Yeah. Like, I'm really enjoying that. I wanted
appreciate this platform.
We appreciate you taking time. Guys, after this, she's literally getting in the car and going right back to speak again. Just to give you guys some context of what's going on here. I know we're wrapping down as we're coming down. I really wanted to ask you this question.
Yes.
Because I think it's relevant and a lot of people want to know the answer. So we talked about you being one, if not, we probably think the only in the C-suite position. There's a lot of brilliant sisters out there, some queens doing some big work, smart, intelligent. What do you think that barrier is right now? Why do you feel like there's not more women, particularly Black women, in the position of power that you have in 2025 right now in this ABA space?
That's a loaded question. I think the first is there's not many of us, right? And so when you look at the numbers across the country, there's 5.4% Black clinicians, right, at the BCBA, BCBAD level. And we're thinking about across 50 states, across different countries, right? So just imagine how dispersed we are. So when you look at one entity or one clinic, right, how many of us are you going to see? That's the first barrier. And then the second barrier is sometimes when there are Black clinicians in a clinic, there's maybe one maybe 2, right? And so the 1 or 2 that are there, the behaviors are masked because they feel like I don't have representation at the top, so I would never get there, right? And so I just, again, as I said in my talk, you have to make sure you are seen. You have to show up with your presence. All things that you want to do, speak up for yourself, and you speak up professionally, but you also do the work, right? You can be undervalued and still over deliver, right? Because consistency is going to build brilliance. And sometimes, again, when people fail, they back off, right? And they say, you know what, I can't do this. So I want to make sure that everybody who fails, they look at that failure and say, okay, where are the gaps there? And what can I do to fulfill those gaps to continue to propel forward? And then lastly, I would say always show up with confidence, because that's something that we don't do. We talk. As clinicians, we love to talk. We're compassionate, right? That's the field that we're in. But with that compassion, you also have to be able to quantify and measure your success, but then also innovate things in this field that will bring attention to you. So I think my biggest goal for every woman, Black woman, white woman, just women in general, is to show up, but to show up with great confidence and confidence and what you do, and then people will see you.
So let me ask you, right? You know, at the Thought Exchange, something that we talked about was DEI, and that's something that's kind of faded now. It isn't really a topic anymore. There was a lot of stuff that companies had to do just to get funding still, and they had to just kind of stay compliant. They had to kind of change the verbiage, right? What are you doing as a leader, you know, of your company to make sure that those diverse voices are still being heard?
Training, and leading. Because I think when you train people up and you lead them accordingly, then they will actually take the roles that they want for themselves. When I think about DEI, you know, originally I was so upset, right? It was dismantled, right? It doesn't exist anymore. But then we have to hone in and think about what was it really? To some people in some organizations, it was a checkbox. Okay, I got a Black person in this role. I got a Black person here. I got a, you know, person with a disability here. I have a Hispanic person here. But was that person the right person for that seat, or was that person a part of the checkbox? So we also don't want to be a part of your checkbox, right? I want to be able to sit in my seat and be able to feel confident and remain in my seat because my competence has put me there. I don't want anybody looking at me and saying, okay, we need a Black person here. We got it, right? So I also don't want to be that person. I don't like that it was dismantled. But I think if we continue to show up in this field, but then also in our humanity itself and show up the right way, educated as we are, some people are just afraid to state their credentials because they think it's going to be problematic for other people or make them feel uncomfortable. But I want us to all know that you find comfort and the knowledge and the skill set that you bring to any environment.
But I want to give a shout out to Sapphire AI and Adams Behavior Consulting again for sponsoring this episode. Quatiba, you've given us some gems. But now it's time to lighten up a little. I know our listeners have been waiting for Coops Off the Clock.
All right, this is Coops Off the Clock, brought to you by Sapphire AI, ABA platform for ABA providers, brought to you by ABA providers. I want to ask you, right? I want to know a time, right, where either you was bullied or did the bullying growing up in New York?
From New York to New York.
New York. Bullied.
Or did the bullying? Don't lie now.
So I was never a bully, but I can't remember anyone bullying me either in New York.
Everyone's had a moment where somebody done pushed you down.
Okay, so let's be transparent. Okay. Push me down once is being mean. Bullying is something that's consistent. Yeah. So. Okay.
So a time somebody been mean.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
This has been amazing. Thank you. You know, I don't feel like this was just an interview. This was a masterclass for women coming up, just women in general, leaders coming up. Are there any final thoughts that you want to share with our listeners today? Any takeaways that you want to leave with them?
Yes, absolutely. I guess whoever did not attend WEBA and hear my talk, I want to make sure that as women in this field and as women in general, leadership is very important. And I never want any women to shrink themselves to make anyone else feel comfortable. So be your authentic self. This world is not a performance. No one's here to cast you. You are only here to achieve your next goal and be the next leader in ABA.
So,
anybody listening, I hope you guys took a lot away from here. This is Beyond the Science. Again, I want to give a quick shout out to Adams Behavior Consulting again and Sapphire AI for sponsoring this episode. Quatiba, we're going to continue to follow your journey. We're inspired by you. We appreciate you. We see you and we value you. So thank you so much. I hope your talk, literally your next talk goes well. And guys, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. We're going to do some big things. Got some amazing guests coming up here, guys. No spoiler alerts. But thank y'all listeners all that. We reached 10K on the TikTok. Yeah, shout out to the TikTok, guys. Appreciate all y'all following us. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube and we'll see you guys next time. That was fun.
Thank you.